Well, another year is down and it's time to talk about the top 10 best horror movies of 2019. Let's do this. What's up, guys? It's time to count down my favorite horror movies this year. There were some pretty good ones this year, actually, and I'm looking forward to diving into this. Right after this, I'm going to record my top 10 worst horror movies of 2019. And I believe I only saw like 22 movies, so there's going to be some bleeding over, but not bleeding on, if that makes sense. My number 10 in the best of might be close to my number 10 in the worst of, rating-wise. So anyway, let's dive right into it. Number 10, I'm going to go with a very unpredictable franchise, Annabelle Comes Home. This one kind of surprised me. You never know what to expect with these Annabelle movies because the first one wasn't that good, and then the second one was really good, actually. So this one right here, I was kind of conflicted with it, but when I saw it, I enjoyed it because of how small in scale it is. It's confined to just this one house. It's the Warrens' daughter, Judy, and she's got to deal with Annabelle. She's got like a sleepover going on, and then Annabelle wreaks havoc. But you know, in terms of scares, I thought there were some pretty effective scares in this movie, actually, especially when one of the characters goes into the Warrens', I guess, room of horrors. And a lot of fun to be had in that scene. But overall, I had a really good time with Annabelle Comes Home. Number 9 is the Child's Play remake. This one actually surprised me quite a bit just because changing the character of Chucky is a very risky proposition. Mark Hamill playing him is a good thing, but he's still very different in this movie than he was in the original with Brad Dourif. It's not really the voice, it's who the character is. You know, in this one, he's just pretty much an animatronic robot, and you know, he is programmed with some evil stuff. You know, he wants to kill. So this one, I think, went more in the horror territory than the previous franchise, even though it did get darker, sometimes sillier. Seed of Chucky is fucking horrible, but I had a really good time with this one, actually. I loved Aubrey Plaza in it. The kid was great. Yeah, just a lot of fun to be had, and it was bloody too, which was cool. Number 8, I consider this horror, so I'm going to put it on the list, Brightburn. You know, it's the evil young Superman type of movie, and this was just an interesting premise to explore because when you have somebody that's as powerful as Superman and making him evil is always a fun thing to do. And when he's a child, you know, he's not fully matured yet, so then he's even more dangerous. And they don't hold back in this movie at all. I mean, there are some of the most graphic scenes of the year are in Brightburn, actually, and that surprised me. I mean, they really went for broke. And I honestly, without going into any spoilers, I loved the ending of this movie too. I think they really went for it. That's all I'm going to say. Number 7, this one was probably one of the most unique horror movies of the year, The Perfection, about these classical musicians and like this obsession with the craft and competitiveness. But this is one of those stories that's just so unpredictable and it goes in so many different directions. And I loved the performances. Also, I like movies that deal with obsession, and this one really fit that mold for the year. But very well directed film and very interesting. Love that you never knew where the story was going to go, and it's just so screwed up in the end. It's definitely like your WTF movie of the year. Number 6, Haunt. This movie was just such a surprise. Another one of those confined environment movies. You could tell that it was low budget, but you know, you can still make a great horror movie on a low budget because the characters in this movie, I thought the villains were great. It kind of reminds me of 31, how I hated the villains in 31 and that kind of ruined the movie. The opposite happened in this movie. I loved the villains. Shout out to Damian Maffey, who's a good friend of mine, who played the devil. I thought the devil was probably the most memorable character in the movie, so good on you, Damian. But I loved the villains and I loved the good guys. You know, there were some fun little traps throughout the movie. To me, this is probably the best movie of its type since The Funhouse. Number 5, a good old creature feature crawl. Kaya Scodelario was great in this. I think she is definitely one of those like screen queens, up and coming. But the alligator action was so fun in this, and you mix that with a hurricane. It got pretty damn intense, actually. That's what I liked, and it was really bloody. You know, I'm always very cautious when it comes to like CGI creatures but it worked in this one. You know, I thought the alligators looked pretty convincing. And there's some nice surprising scenes in this too. With creature features, you always want like sneak attacks, and there's some good sneak attacks in this one. Number 4, Ready or Not. Another big scream queen here, Samara Weaving. This was a fun movie. It's one of those like game horror type movies, and what if you're in this this just really messed up premise? You know, marrying this guy and his family, they play this game where they try to hunt and kill the bride. That's fun stuff. And so this movie was just a ride, but I think what elevated it was Samara Weaving's performance. She has some fun moments in this where she reacts to what's going on, and sometimes it's hilarious. And more importantly, she kicks ass too. There's like a great arc of her character, because at the beginning, you know, she's kind of like befuddled, like what the hell's going on? And so she has to quickly become a badass. You know, she's forced to either nut up or shut up, and she nuts up big time. Number 3, probably one of the most unique movies of the year, The Lighthouse. And I really loved this movie because of the performances. It really reminded me of The Thing, actually. And you have these 2 characters that are in this lighthouse throughout the whole movie. One of them is going completely insane, and the other one is just a complete asshole. And I don't want to say he's an asshole, but it's just, he's a hard person to live with. When you got somebody that's young, living with somebody that's old and cranky, and you're there for months, eventually it's going to come to a head, and that's what happens in The Lighthouse. I thought the performances were amazing. Great direction by Robert Eggers, who directed one of my favorite movies, The Witch. But the performances by both these actors, especially Robert Pattinson, was amazing. Number 2, another effed up movie. Tons of these on here. Midsommar. Last one we were just talking about Robert Eggers, and now we got Ari Aster coming back doing Midsommar. This was a beautifully directed movie, and it goes crazy in the last act. But really, like Hereditary, I loved the plot of this movie and how batshit weird it got. And even the way it was filmed, you know, it was almost like euphoric and hyper-realistic and just beautifully directed. But I love like horror movies that pull you further and further into insanity. And this one did it beautifully. And then my number 1, this movie was my number 1 movie of the year overall for a long time, Us. And this is a conflicting movie too, because there's a lot of people that didn't like Us. But for me, the story I thought was genius. I loved the twist at the end of the movie. I liked the idea of this above ground and this underground society and how they meet and come to a head. And really just the premise of a family that looks exactly like you, and you got to go head to head with them. One thing that I was worried about was if this was going to deliver in terms of scares and in terms of really like blood and guts, and it does. You know, in the middle of the movie, after they're setting up the story and building the characters and everything, then, you know, it all comes to a head and it gets really graphic and bloody, and I enjoyed it. So there were some really unique and, I guess, for lack of a better term, like artsy horror movies this year, and I always dig those types of horror films. As a matter of fact, I actually went to Halloween Horror Nights back in October, and they had an Us house, which was really fun. But, you know, I think Jordan Peele did such a great job of like creating a brand with Us. It's one of those types of movies that has a stamp on it, even down to like the weapon they use. The scissors have like such a unique look to them. I think it's genius. So anyway, guys, that's my top 10 best horror movies of the year. Let me know in the comments if I missed any, or if there's other movies that you like better than these movies. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day, and on Fridays we do Free For All Fridays. I'm going to try to put together a Killer Flicks Horror Awards over the next few weeks, like we did last year, so that could be a lot of fun. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and Drumdums out.